Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is the making of Modulators of the Universe Part 2, Sound Design. I want to remind you that if you want to buy this FLP, you could do that. You can have it for yourself. This exact project that we're messing with right now can be on your computer if you purchase it at fixstore.com/SeamlessR, and you pick the deluxe version. Anyway, starting with a kick, because what else would I be doing? So, the chronicle of me understanding how to make a hardstyle kick began with tutorials and began with information that I kind of knew, but it was never properly like explained to me. And it's actually reminded me kind of a lot about how I eventually learned how to do sort of noisiest style sound design, because like the statements people would usually make when I ask, well, how do you do that? And they go, oh, you just detune some saws and distort it. They're not wrong, but that's like 1/8 of the story, right? And so with the hardstyle cake, it was just kind of like the first thing that confused me about it was that a lot of producers will like separate the parts of the kick. You have the hit, they call it the talk, and then the body, which I think they actually called the gong, or is this just the body? I don't know, whatever. And then the tail, like 3 different parts. I actually only did 2 parts. I had the body and the tail are kind of together, and then the talk is its own separate thing. But that's the thing, is that I saw that as kind of unnecessary complication of just being like, because they decided to separate the 3 parts of the kick. And also because when they pitched the thing, they pitched just the body and not the actual impact. And I didn't get the importance of that until I realized that especially the talk in itself is actually a completely separate sound. It's not even part of the actual kick sound. And it's there to do its job, and then the gong is really just layered beneath it. And when I got that, then it started to make a little bit more sense. So it begins with using a 909. Now, the specific 909 that I'm using actually isn't just a straight up 909. Thank you, Facebook. It's, maybe I did use it for this one, I forget. But initially I used that. But if you play around with these guys, you find that guy, and that actually is a 909, but it has more of a, slightly more body to it. And when I put that in there, that actually worked out a hell of a lot better. I think I am actually still using the 909 kick in here, though. And am I using it in all of them? Yes, I am. That one. And then these are the talks, so that actually barely even matters what I'm using here. I mentioned before about how I experimented outside of the track from scratch, and I actually did a different hairstyle kicks, and I actually got better results. And then I am not using that because of process complications trying to get it over here. But it starts with a 909. And in this case, did I do anything special in here? No, I'm using Harmer because I wanted to try and cleverly circumvent the whole 3-parter kick thing, because I didn't want to worry about like pitching up samples and whatever. I just wanted to have a thing that I could control by like playing a note and having it be a note. The 909 I think is at G sharp, a little bit off G sharp, but it's close enough that we can kind of use it. You can kind of hear that that's the one that like is making the sort of the main tone, but all the individual parts are contributing to be part of the whole. And those two there are the talk kind of sounds. And like there could definitely be immense complication in creating a hardstyle kick, and even this is way more complicated than most of my normal sound design. So I can see where people get the idea that the hardstyle kick creation is the hardest kind of sound design there is. And I just, to people who want to say that, I'll just say that tedium does not equal difficulty. But so this first guy is just distorted a lot, like straight up, and then there's a big kind of boost at the bottom there. This is really just sort of additional feeling. And you see that most of these are going into the same things because they're being layered together. But again, the main guy doing anything is this here, and this is sort of like the crux of the whole matter, is that you distort it, it creates additional harmonics, and then you put a big peak in there, you distort it again. Now this guy is particularly important, and I missed this until like the very end of producing this track, that a big part of the hardstyle sound for the kick comes from asymmetrical distortion. And I just forgot about asymmetrical distortion at this point. It was kind of like a distortion renaissance, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. And the important part about asymmetrical distortion, especially in this context, is that it brings back the saw wave harmonics. Because when you distort something normally, like especially if it's a very kind of round sound that has a lot of lower harmonics, you get square harmonics. It starts to sound very square-like, and because that's what you get when you distort a sine wave, which is just the lowest fundamental tone. And to get a saw harmonic series out of there, you have to use asymmetrical distortion. And the reason for that is because what asymmetrical distortion does is that a regular distortion will distort both sides of the positive and the negative polarity of the waveforms, period, evenly. The same shape, same everything. So you can think of this as being events. You get 2 events per oscillation. And that's really what a square wave is, because you have a big up, a big down, and a big up again, a big down. So you go up and down really hard twice in the same waveform. Whereas a saw wave, it just goes big up, big up, big up. So you get 1 event per oscillation. The 1 event per oscillation is very important. And so when we do asymmetrical distortion, we essentially have different distortion on either the positive or negative. That really means that both events are their own, and one of them is going to be greater than the other. But that whole thing only happens 1 time per oscillation, and that difference is important, and especially creates kind of the tone that we really want out of a hardstyle kick. I had a really hard time with that for kind of a long time, and it's really funny because it's a really basic tenet of distortion, and you think I know that, but I forgot. But yeah, let's listen to what this sounds like, this one kick, before all this processing. And so I think a post, yeah, there's like a reverb and some EQ. No EQ. It's just there, I guess. So then so here's just this guy. Oops. In Harmor, I don't believe I'm messing with the scale at all. I'm just putting it straight up in there, but I am messing with the speed. Yeah. So essentially it starts off fast and it slows down. The whole point of this is that I can play it and then like hold on to it. And for some reason it doesn't want to work anymore. There it is. Yeah. It lasts just long enough for it to, you know, actually be a sound, because the thing, it doesn't just sustain for more than a beat ever. But the sustain, I want it to be there for as long as it need to be. And that's the important problem, because when I play like higher notes, for example, if this were a sample, it'd be playing faster. And so I need it to still be a beat length when I play it, you know, up here. So putting in a harmony like that ensures that it's the same length the whole time. You could also do this with just like time stretching. But it's just, I'm a harmor guy. And so then the first step is that it gets distorted. And that does a pretty good job. And then we get our big EQ boost. Now this guy's fun. See how the thing's moving? And this is actually mimicking what happens when we do it with sample-based, because a lot of the tone, the hardstyle tone that we're used to, is because of the sample-based processing, where we distort it, we have the big peak, and we make a sample out of it, and we keep processing over and over again. But we still have the same sample. And when we create a sample that has this profile, when we play a higher note, it's just going to play that same profile just in the higher position. And so that means that what big peak we had at like 500 hertz or whatever is actually going to be higher than that, or lower than that if we play a lower note. And so I didn't want to do that, but that's a pretty big part of the tone. So I have in here keyboard mapping, so that when it plays higher or lower, it actually moves a little bit, so that the tone changes appropriately in such a way that it sounds kind of like what it would sound like if it were being sampled. I say kind of because I didn't measure it exactly to make sure it was literally being the same as it would be if it were being sampled, but it's enough to give the sort of impression of that tonal change. Because otherwise we'd have that peak at the same position for every note, and then it would just sound the same every time, and that really was not what we want. And then that gets distorted again, but I put a chorus on here just to kind of mess with it. And actually, I don't know if it's this one, but a couple of these actually, I have, it is this one. So I have phase random disengaged here. And I know that no hardstyle producer who wanted to be a hardstyle producer would ever do this, but I wanted to do it because I thought it was cool. I also heard sheeters on it and a little bit of stereo, and this is so that like it's actually different for every single hit, because I thought that was more interesting. I understand that deviates from the golden plan of hardstyle, but I know that it does. I did it on purpose, just so you know that. And now I have this distortion, and I'm also modulating a couple things. I'm measuring the mix of the preamp is what I'm doing. Yeah, so these things all change on every hit. You can see them doing it, and it's really because like the motion and the automation of a hardstyle kick over its life, its very short life, is still very kind of immense. It's like, you fade some sub in, you fade out, because this particular one, I'm also like, that's moving this guy, so there's that, but like, and then there's this guy. So this dude actually moves like the profile. So once it gets distorted again, and we hear it in here, and and oh my god, bleh. And then we put it in here, and that's just to kind of like just to take a little bit of control of the harmonic profile, and that's done through an envelope. But it's just like wow. This is the this one here actually is controlling the EQ, and then these two are controlling the pre. This is the premix. Yeah, this is the preamp, and this is the mix. So the sort of distortion's off for a second, and you can see if I actually screw with that, and I actually kept it going. So there's that. And so it's just me trying to be in control of processes that are usually the result of the sample-based processing I mentioned for that kind of thing. But also because, like, especially with the preamping, every once in a while, and I had this problem with this kick, but like every time I mess with it, I think a different version of what's happening sounds better than the last one. So like for this one, I kind of like what it sounds like when it's just this. But I mean, it changes all the time. And also for the EQ position on the last one, what I'll do is I move the bass around, and I just to put the big peak someplace else. You can hear the phase right. I'm just kind of screwing it up every now and then. That's on purpose. I want to remind you that's on purpose. Just because I thought it was cool. All right. And then this goes into this distortion again. And that's everything else with it. That's these couple guys coming in here too. So like this is the main dude, and then here's the first talk, actually, because this guy is just distorted and then EQ'd, and that's just there to add some bass and some punch to it. And then here's this dude, which is that, and he starts off being a pretty short version of the 909, and then distorted pretty hard. He gets the big peak too, but this guy's a little bit different because he's high passed. So we do this to get the harmonics out of here, so it's a bit more harmonic-y, and then we high pass the shit out of it. And then we distort that. And when we distort high frequency material like that, we get a very different profile. And so it's sort of where that is also determines kind of the feeling of like the talk as well. And usually, I suppose you probably want that to be in the same place as the main bass's position, but maybe not. I don't know. I haven't actually mastered this, as that might be apparent to people. And a little bit of EQing just to kind of make that feel better. And that goes into the distortion against everything else, which creates this. And also, this goes itself out there. So this goes in here to influence the sound by its punchiness, and then it goes out there and dry to because we also want to hear it. And there's this one, which is a bit more of a harder core version of it, and it starts out pretty similar. It might even be the same exact patch. Yeah. And then it gets a bump in the middle, and then distorted really hard, and then it gets high pass as well, but not as much, but then also really big peak at closer to 500 versus this one's a little bit higher, 500. And then distorted again really hard. It's a lot of really hard distortion. And it's not actually because we want it to be overly distorted, although it is because it's overly distorted, but because it's actually a little bit quieter. The signals we're used to using are a bit quieter. The first stage of distortion is honestly just to give us a bass to work with, because the kick by itself isn't enough. There's barely any activity in there to be distorted. Now this guy is funny. This citrus is actually just a kick. The kick I made before. And that's there because the whole process is like, once you do that and we compress it all, it's very, we lose actual punch, and then we bring this back to kind of have something to work with. Now, a lot of things that I've done here and a lot of things I try to do to make this kick is kind of sacrilege to lots of hardstyle producers, and I'm aware of that. But one of the things I always thought was kind of interesting about hardstyle was that it didn't hit all that hard to me. I've never seen it live, and I'm sure it's a very different experience live. A lot of people have told me that the purpose is usually just to be live, but it always just struck me as odd that a style that was so, I mean, it's called hard style, didn't have the same kind of like punch and kick as like something like a dubstep track. But like, that's hard style is a very old genre, so it was around and created in times that did not necessarily it didn't have that kind of competition in terms of punch. Not only that, but then like, I think there was a Noise Controllers track. It was from like 2010 or something. I forget what it was called or where it was, how old it is, but it had in it, it had like a drum fill that sounded exactly like the kind of drum fill you'd hear in a modern dubstep track, like that kind of same punchiness, and then it just went to being a straight hardstyle track. And I thought that was a strange choice because like you're essentially showing up your hardstyle kick, your hardstyle progression with a much harder hitting thing. But then I guess no people who like hardstyle don't actually care about punch; they care more about the wall of sound, the kind of euphoric climax, which is actually what they refer to it as. And I'm not knocking that. That's that's your deal if you're into that. But from an outsider who's not even into hardstyle, but who's into bass music in general, that just, it struck me as a very strange thing. And it took me kind of a while to essentially accept that as like the way things are. What else is okay? So that's the kick, and then let's actually just talk about the vocal processing because I'm sure people want to hear about that too.
Glory be to the modulators of the universe.
So what does it sound like by itself?
Glory be to the modulators of the universe. I'm just gonna do that the first time. If it doesn't work, I'll do it again.
So I was recording this, and there's a lot of room noise in there, and that's why there's that volume automation. I could have actually handled that with noise cancellation processing in Edison, but I didn't want to risk losing any of the character. So there's a lot of reverb in post in here, but like without the reverb.
Glory be to the modulators of the universe.
There a lot went into doing this. I'm actually a little stupefied that I didn't keep any of the processing in here, but or did I? I really didn't. So this began as me recording myself speaking slightly lower than I am now. I'm going like, glory be to the modulators of the universe. Like that specific tone too. Because like I wasn't trying to, but I did kind of end up sounding like Optimus Prime in this.
The spectrum of our souls must change. The spectrum of our souls must change.
So I would talk like that, and then I think I did one round of pitching it down, and then one round of time stretching it using the monophonic mode. I pitched it down with the time stretching. I might have used the regular generic for that, but that's not terribly important because the next step was that I resample it in Harmor. And now this is actually the part where all of this becomes really important because in Harmor you're allowed to. I'll just open up a new one to show you. When you put in the image, the sound, whatever, you have this format mix thing over here, which is sort of what you want to have on. But like, even if you don't mess with this at all, you can go into the drop-down menu and click on the image format mutation window. Do I have layered windows on? I do. This window allows you to change the formants on a per harmonic basis. So it moves what it decides are going to be like format harmonics around. I'm not sure how it processes that or what they're defined as, but essentially saying like instead of moving down everything all at once, you can pick and choose your targets. So this actually means that you can very, very deeply screw around with like a voice. And I did that, but then after doing that, I also played an octave of my voice lower, a bit quieter too, but lower than the original. So you can kind of hear it in here.
Glory be to the modulators of the universe.
It sounds a little like a chord, and that's because it is. There's a lower version of my voice in there, and that's adding to the kind of the girth of everything, the girth of the whole sound.
We must all modulate our lives.
So then once I made that, I rendered it out, and I put this through. I just pitched it down again a little bit. And I may have used the monophonic mode. The reason I talk about the monophonic mode is because it creates a kind of like a remodulated effect, which can be useful for things. And then that's what this file is. And then this over here is that you can see there's no noise in between here because I rendered out a recording of this with the volume modification on. And then I used Edison's blur function, which will essentially create reverb coming from both directions. You can kind of think of it as preverb. And I'm fading it in with the volume automation down here to kind of control for it. And that's what's creating that kind of like Protoss-y feel. Come on. If you want to know specifically where that function is, come in here, and it's this button there. And then if there were audio in here, let's actually just do a little thing. Bam. You can see we have an amount, and then over here we can create our own impulse. This is what it is by default, but like if I you can move it around to determine essentially how you want it to be. If you did something like this. Hello. It's not that long. Oh, I turned it off. Derp. Yeah, so it screws around with it. Let's actually... And if I did this, and then like did that, you can hear like the little wavy thing going on in there, versus doing something like this, which, like, regular reverb would be like if there was nothing here, but then something here. But then this would be like if there's reverb coming behind it, which is neat. You can only do it at the start of the audio file, so that the fact that it begins there is what's created that problem. But if I put some silence in there, that would lead into it. But this interface and this whole process is Windows. Nothing, literally nothing. I don't understand what. Okay, whatever. So that's what created this, and then I layered that in there to create, the overall effect. Does this get its own thing? I'm pretty sure it does. It doesn't have any processing on it, though. And then this is, 16. It has this patcher in here, which engages a couple of things. So I'm using Valhalla Room and Valhalla Shimmer to just create a weird profile, a little bit of compression to kind of bring it back up. But it's mostly in the mids. Oh, it's de-essing. I'm de-essing. This is what this is. So sibilance exists in a specific position of the EQ spectrum, and is usually around here. So essentially, like when you talk normally, and you make like wide vowel sounds, and you don't make a lot of strong, tight sibilance, there's not a lot of action in the higher frequencies. So what you do is you take that section over there. If you bring it down like this, if I just play it, it'll show you.
Glory be to the modulators of the universe.
So like, universe was kind of a problem when it came up like that. And then, so this will essentially read for how long, like how much it comes around, and then they'll bring it down to an appropriate level. That's what de-essing is. A de-esser is usually just a compressor that works on sibilance. So that's what's going on there, because I've created kind of a lot. But I am also, a reason why that happened is because I'm actually distorting it again, but I'm keeping it under the higher frequencies here. So like,
Glory be to the modulators of the universe.
The distortion's adding a slight bit of extra like crunch to it.
Glory be to the modulators of the universe.
So that's the addition of the sound there. And part of that addition actually is a result of a little bit of phasing, because this being here when it is, it's adding in like this teensiest amount of latency, but like not enough to matter most of the time. And the regular spectrum, and then also because the phase change brought it from having EQ'd it's creating some of that action just because of the crunching it together with phase cancellation, which is a little bit interesting. And not something I really control for. I just kind of let it happen, unless it's like really bad. And that's how that sound happened. What else is important? Let's look at the printer style. So this started as me trying to make like an actual lead, a little bit something more sort of normal trappy. I mentioned this in the arrangement video. Because you play it low enough, it starts to sound like one, but if you play it high enough, it sounds like an actual printer, which I didn't plan for, but it just happened that way, and I think it's hilarious. So in the beginning, this was a citrus. It's gotta be an easier way to do this. I'll just put in a fruity balance. Oh, do I not have a balance? I haven't, I just, redid all my effects. Is it in dynamics? Oh my God. Fruity balance. Oh, it's not there. That's dumb. All right. Well, it's probably in that list. I don't want to waste too much time trying to find it. Okay, so goodbye. Wee. Is this just a saw? Sort of. Okay, so it's a square wave with a whole lot of skewing in there. So if you make this a saw wave and you mess around with like the skews, you can screw with it. And then so this was almost a saw wave, which left a little bit of tail in there. And so when I hit the skew really hard, it pushes it in there, and then the tension can kind of like screw it that way too. And that creates this waveform. And that's all that's happening here, isn't it? Yeah. And then I think I'm using the Portamento from inside Patcher to do this. And that works nicely. And that gets distorted with this fucker. So this business, this is like, this is folding. This is what folding looks like. And essentially, you see how when I play it and this line shows up, that determines that shows the level of the input coming in. And as the level comes in, it's essentially saying that it's moving through these here. If I made it louder, it would go through more of them. And that would change the overall tone of the sound. And I believe I automate that. No, I don't. Whoa. Yeah. Suffice to say, it screws up the sound quite a lot. Especially if you're playing higher frequency sounds. No, I'm not. So then lots of choruses, and they just kind of go into each other. And they're mostly the same sort of basic settings of slow, low amounts of depth, delay, and stereo. And I believe everything else is the same. And then they come in together to create. But I'm also putting in the dry signal into this next distortion, which is asymmetrical and sort of basic asymmetrical, not really like that impressive. So when you turn on the wave shaper to be asymmetrical mode, what happens is that this quadrant represents the positive polarity and this quadrant represents negative polarity. You can still move the waveform to be down here, but what that would mean is that you're moving what would be in the positive polarity to be in the negative polarity, and it can be kind of fun. This gets EQ'd to be mostly just this. We get some reverb, some other reverb. And then this P controller actually shuts it up because its job is to essentially like it's on when it's on and it's off when it's off. So this is ensuring that, see, there is a pretty balance. This is ensuring that this reverb tail, which lasts for fucking ever, shuts off when it's done. But it's on still to have the effect. And this one's a little bit, shorter. I think this comes up by itself. No, it does not. This one goes up by itself. Okay, so this is a mid-side split. This is coming in down here. When you put the stereo shaper in this particular mode here, you can come over here and say an in-out difference, and it'll essentially create whatever. This creates, cancellation because you're combining the signals as such, the left-right channels in such a way, and then essentially the opposite of that, like what gets canceled gets put out a different signal, and so that this configuration means that this is the mid and this is the side. So I'm essentially engaging mid-side EQ here, and us not seeing anything is actually because the parametric EQ samples its analysis from the mid, which is interesting. That's how you make a printer. It's mostly because of the rampant and ridiculous aliasing being caused by the really high frequencies created but through this particular kind of processing that's causing like the weird tonal shift when you go higher. It would be a lot worse if I kept the lower frequencies up here. You could really see the aliasing, which is probably why I had that there in the first place. So yeah, that's the printer. What else is important? So here's like the synth pluck thing that shows up over here. I have an XY control. Do I ever change these positions in this automation? That might be what these is. No, that's not that at all. I'm pretty sure what they control is the release time on filters and stuff like that. Yeah, it's like that's what that's supposed to be for. So both of these positions are controlling the filter position, but then also the envelope amount. And the reason for that is that, like in your typical sort of trance swell, what happens is that the filter opens up, but near the end there, it doesn't sound like it's being plucked at all. It's just a solid note now. And that happens because we have an envelope on the pluck to make it pluck, but then we slowly remove its influence on the filter overall. And that's this knob right there. And that's what that automation is controlling, which is neat. Other than that, this is just a super saw. I think there's just one of them. Yep. And there's a filter and it's a low pass. I have the width turned up, which means essentially like it's like saying it has low resonance. Even though I'm not using any actual resonance, the resonance is mostly just how sharp the cutoff is, right? Most of the time. We can think of that as the case for now. And so a wider version of it just means it's softer. That's what that's for. And then this one is just another version of it with a different kind of unison. So this one is done using the Hertz unison and a little bit of phase randomness, a lot of phase randomness, a sharper pluck, and then just similar settings. The filters are in the same position for both of them. And that's pretty much the end of that. These both go into an EQ and then some reverb. And the balance, I'm not sure what that's for. I think I might sidechain that individually. But either that or I automate it on or off. There's some reverb I think I'm using in here too. Yeah, there's reverb in there and compression as well. Not a lot else to speak of. There's a couple of leads. This is the alternate lead. This is the one I use to be the off notes. And it's a serum with a really wide unison. Okay, actually, I'm pretty sure if I change this, it'll screw it up. But I want to try it anyway, because I know this can work. Make bridged. Good, still the same. All right, and now, bam. Wait, oh no, I actually wanted to turn off DPI aware. That's what I wanted to do. Shit. I killed it. But now it's big. That was okay. It's the same sound more or less as lead 2. Oh, that's what I was using. Wait, is this the same one? No, it's not. Okay, so this is this one. Let's try this again. All right. I do not want DPI aware. Make bridged. Neat. Let's turn the window. Yay. Okay, so burp, big unison, and very wide. So like I'm using 16 voices. I'm using 16. Okay, 16 voices and just wide. And then in the global. Okay, I kept the width pretty close. Am I moving the warp? I am moving the warp. Oh, okay. So in the global settings, this changes all the things that are controlled by unison. The range is just a pitch range. The width is how wide it is stereo-wise. And I see I brought it down a little bit. It's 100% by default, which is a bit much. And then over here is actually the warp modes, which I think is off by default. And wavetable position, that kind of thing. It's just a saw wave, so I don't have any wavetable positions, but I do have warp. And the warp is FM from B, so which means that every voice actually has a little bit of different amount of FM on it, which is increasing the sort of the density of it. It's like if I didn't have any warp versus having that back. It's like kind of subtle, but it's in there, and it makes it feel a little bit more dense. That's actually all that I'm doing here. I'm not using any of the effects inside Serum, and then I'm distorting the shit out of it with big distortion, and then I have reverb for Valhalla. That kind of lead is really the simplest thing you can do, other than just like having a saw wave by itself. This is having 16 saw waves, so a saw wave and 15 friends. And then those two leads are the same kind of thing, and then they're in there, and then I play a lower version of the real lead in here, which is causing that like weird like the beehive sound. Am I filtering it too? Dude, no, it's filtering it. Oh yeah. So that filtering was actually because in here I'm actually side chaining specific frequency sections. We'll cover that when we talk about mixing, because mixing this was kind of fun. Where the hell are those automation clips? Oh Jesus, why are they way down here? I could have just had them below. Whatever, that's weird, but okay. That explains a lot. Yeah. And then nothing new. Oh shit. Oh yeah. So the filler things. So this guy is fun. This is like a combo thing. I have a will this even play by itself? Yeah. So that's what that sounds like by itself. And this is like just a kick, actually, I think. Yeah, by itself, or BS. Oh. All right, so this is this using just like the kick by itself? Is that what this is? What the hell file is this? It's just some file. I think this is a recording of the hardstyle kick, and then I filtered it. No, there's no filter here. This is unison, and then okay, I'm putting it through big ass change here. This is just a really thin bandpass, and it's being distorted against another version of itself. So that's keeping it all peaky and that kind of thing. And then this is also being modulated. It's being FM'd or peaked by the same idea. Like this is the volume of the real sound, and here's a version of it that's being just bandpassed really tightly. So like it's being controlled. Like one of these controls the level. I think it's this one. Yeah. So like when it's low, it's just the bandpass version, and when it's high, it has more of the regular version of it in there. And then that gets really compressed together so that like the quality, like, the characters kind of get interchanged. Distorted really heavily, and then high pass because the bass is insane, and then reverb to kind of make it sound tighter. Combining with this, and that gets us that weird kind of like hardstyle-y effects that show up in there, which I used a few times. That's a different automation on the bandpass position. And same thing with this guy. This is a different one. So this guy first shows up in the beginning. This dude. Pretty similar stuff. It's actually it's the same stuff. Yeah, this is the that guitar socket from the beginning, but I'm playing 3 notes of it together, and the bandpass is being modulated on top of it. Exploring that sound design was fun when I was just doing this new. And then this is just like, but with different bandpass automations. Lots of reverb, of course. I have a big reverb here. That's a crash. Where's this guy again? There's not reverb in here, but there's reverb. Do I have this in the crash channel? I do. That's interesting. I don't believe that was on purpose. It just kind of happened. And then that's all the sound design that was really in this track. I had the rest of it's mostly just mixing. That's kind of just it. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.